Hello everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Dan, here with another episode of Exploder just for you. With the recent departure or the impending departure of Dean Ambrose, guys like Luke Harper asking for the release, and so on, I started thinking about how people exit companies. Now, I've done an episode before, check out in the archives on the page and on our Podbean and all over the place. I've talked about in the past how someone debuts a character, how someone comes into a company, and that's very important. Is how you debut them is just as important as where you debut them. But one thing that's also very interesting about pro wrestling is how people exit. Exiting a company can be sometimes mysterious, sometimes controversial, but someone leaving a company often has a lot about how you see that performer, sort of bookends who they are. Everyone remembers, like I said, the vignettes of bringing in a guy like Scott Hall, but how he left with the curtain call was controversial in a way that bringing him in wasn't. But it gives you an idea of his career in the WWF from 1992 until 1996. So in this episode, I want to look at some of the more memorable, maybe good, maybe bad, but memorable ways, the last appearances, the exits from the company of a performer, whether it's WWF or WCW. So without any further ado, let's get to the first one. Incoherent babbler, steroid enthusiast, and creator of words, the Ultimate Warrior actually had 3 exits from the WWF because he was such a great guy to work with. The first was an unceremonious firing after SummerSlam 91, when he and Hulk Hogan took on the entire country of Iraq. He came back later and was fired for failing a drug test for, take a wild guess, but I want to talk about his last appearance in the WWF, which happened in July of 1996. In March of 1996, Vince McMahon presumably was hit in the head really hard and forgot what it was like working with the Ultimate Warrior and rehired the Ultimate Warrior. After squashing some jobber at WrestleMania, appearing on TV in a frickin' baseball cap, demolishing everyone's favorite Oscar statue come to life, and publishing a comic book where it looks like he raped Santa Claus, look it up, the Ultimate Warrior was suspended, aka fired, by the WWF for not showing up for events, which by that point was pretty much the only thing he could do. He was suspended, and again, basically fired by on-screen commissioner, on-screen president, Gorilla Monsoon, for not appearing at events. He was ordered to put up a performance bond, which in point of a storyline doesn't make any sense, and he was even replaced in a 6-man tag at In Your House International Incident, where he was supposed to team with Ahmed Johnson and Shawn Michaels to face Camp Cornette, consisting of Owen Hart, the British Bulldog, and Vader. He was of course replaced with Psycho Sid. When Sid is the more reliable person in this, you've messed something up. His last appearance was on a taped Raw in which the Ultimate Warrior faced off against Owen Hart. The Warrior would win by disqualification after Camp Cornette would attack the Warrior, and Owen Hart would come off the top rope with, I assume he was doing sort of a Bob Orton gimmick, where he had a cast on, and he would hit the Ultimate Warrior with the cast, knocking him out. This would be the Ultimate Warrior's last appearance in the WWF. This is in July of 1996. This would be his last appearance for the company until 2014, when he would come back for his Hall of Fame speech. That's how long he was gone. He would have a short run in the WCW during a feud where he had a match with Hulk Hogan, which I'm pretty sure is considered a war crime. But his last appearance in the WWF before in 2014, when he came back for the Hall of Fame during that weekend, was in 1996. And it involved him getting beaten up on TV and then suspended, aka fired, after not showing up to events. That was his last appearance. Just something to think about. Now, speaking of Sid, now how often do you say that sentence? Sid's exit from the WWF, his last exit from the WWF, happened in 1997. During his second run of the company, which included 2 world title wins, being in a feud with a lot of top guys, including Vader, including Bret Hart, The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, and the like. He main evented pay-per-views, like quite a few pay-per-views. Sid would sort of disappear. Now, it's not unusual for a talent, or even a top talent, to leave a company and go to another. That's not unusual. But for such a top talent to just sort of fizzle, just sort of disappear, not to a major injury, mind you, just sort of not be put on TV again and just disappear, it's very odd. Of course, Sid came back to the company in July of 1996 to fill in for the aforementioned Ultimate Warrior in the 6-man tag. He would be sort of a babyface ally of Shawn Michaels before turning on him and winning the title from him by hitting him with a camera in Madison Square Garden Survivor Series 1996. That's world title number 1. He would then lose the title at the Royal Rumble 1997 in San Antonio, because that's how the story went. He would then win the title back after Final 4. He would go into WrestleMania 13 against The Undertaker, which of course he would lose to The Undertaker because it was WrestleMania 13. It was The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar was still in high school. So after WrestleMania 13, Sid would be used sparingly. He would then return to the WWF sort of randomly as a baby face, go against the Hart Foundation, and then for no real reason, he just left the company in July of 1997. Basically, that's it. He left in 1997. They just used him a couple times after WrestleMania, and then he left to get neck surgery, supposedly. And he would be gone from mainstream wrestling for almost 2 years before he showed up in January 1999 in ECW, wearing blue jeans. I couldn't make that up. I really couldn't. Of course, you can't talk about professional wrestling exits without talking about Bret Hart. There's really no way I could do it. I think I'm legally required to mention Bret Hart when we're talking about exits. The Montreal Screwjob, the Screw Bret Express, the reason an entire country hated Shawn Michaels for over a decade, has got to go down as one of the most memorable yet bizarre professional exits in wrestling history. With what Sid was to just disappearing for mystery, the Montreal Screwjob was jackhammer-like subtlety. I mean, who else can say that their exit from a company included a conspiracy, destroying company property, spitting on your boss, then punching him in the face? Maybe some of you, but that's between you and your probation officer. But what else is there really to say about the Montreal Screwjob? What else has been said that has been written about? In book form, in article form, there's been radio interviews, there's now 2 documentaries, one with Wrestling with Shadows, and now the Viceland, the Vice documentary, which I haven't seen yet. I'm hoping to, but I don't have cable, so we'll see how that works out. It's been rehashed by the WWF numerous times where they actually redid the Montreal Screwjob in a work environment. Just to remind you how this went down, in case you forgot, short story, Bret didn't want to lose to Shawn. Vince wanted Bret to lose to Shawn. Bret lost to Shawn. Bret wouldn't shut up about it for a decade. Bret kinda shuts up now, kinda. And that's all you need to know. That was an exit, that's a heck of an exit, but it's probably the most famous exit in professional wrestling history, and really, there's nothing I can say that's going to add to it. I'm not Dave Meltzer, so let's move on. Let's go on to the other side of the battleground that was the Monday Night War and cover the last appearance of a WCW star. And when I say WCW star, obviously I'm talking about Steve McMichael. Legendary 1985 Chicago Bears Super Bowl football player, passable color commentator, and god-awful pro wrestler Steve Manga McMichael is known for 2 things. 1, bringing Deborah McMichael into professional wrestling, and being the worst horseman since Paul Roma. Surprisingly, his career with WCW would stretch from June of 1996 to February of 1999. He lasted almost 3 years, despite the fact that he had the wrestling talent of a Sears mannequin with a missing leg. What was his exit like, you ask? He was attacked by the newly formed NWO Elite and had bleach thrown in his eyes. That's right, the last appearance of Steve McMichael in WCW featured someone trying to blind him. Really? I mean, if you wanted to do that, you couldn't have done that in 1996 and saved us a lot of time, but I digress. Back to the WWF side, because why not? Let's talk about Jeff Jarrett. Old Double J, as no one really calls him, had a colorful career in professional wrestling, from his creating, squandering, and eventual departure from TNA numerous times, to his inexplicable main event spot in WCW. There's so much to talk about when mentioning the guy who keeps Guitar Center in business. What I find most interesting is his exit from the WWF in 1999. Jeff Jarrett was the Intercontinental Champion going into No Mercy 1999 when his contract expired. Seeing this oversight, knowing that he had a match coming up with the original genetic freak China, Vince McMahon did his best to sign Jarrett to a one-night deal just so he'd show up without a contract on pay-per-view and drop the title to China. The 2 sides came to an agreement after Jarrett got McMahon to pay a hefty sum, rumored to be around $300,000 for one match. Double J showed up, did a terrible Good Housekeeping garbage match with China, dropped the title to her, went to WCW the next night, and wouldn't appear on WWF programming until 2018. He was actually still part of WCW when it was purchased by the WWF during the famous simulcast, but was famously fired from day one when Mr. McMahon made a point of firing him on the air. Keep in mind, this is the same Mr. McMahon who signed Buff Bagwell, made DDP stalk Undertaker's second wife, so maybe judgment wasn't the best thing back then, but here we are. Also, when talking about exits, it's hard not to talk about one big stinky elephant in the room, the lockup fest that was Brock Lesnar versus Bill Goldberg at WrestleMania 20. This bore of a match would not only happen for the first time at WrestleMania, it would also be the last appearance for both men for years to come. After a year where he was only the top guy, a world champion who feuded with main event guys on a regular basis, clearly Goldberg was not happy with his position in the WWF. Oh, I'm sorry, WWE, pandas. Likewise, the 20-something future part-timer millionaire was all ready to hang up the boots to follow his dreams of being cut from a B-level NFL team. Woo! The two paths unfortunately crossed at WrestleMania 20, where the highlight was when Stone Cold Steve Austin stunned both of them at the end of it. Not much more to say. Two guys on their way out of the company had a terrible match at the biggest show of the year. If that's not a memorable exit, I don't know what is. So what have we learned today? What we've learned about professional wrestling is how you exit. It's not as important as how you debut. Coming into a company is really important. It's how you debut a character and how you're part of what's going on and how you fit in the current thing. Every time there's a debut, I love when they have the videos, the vignettes that show people coming in. How people exit is not near as important. I mean, back in the territory days, it kind of was. Guys would go and job on their way out because they'd be going to another territory. Well, now, currently, there's really no other territory. Now, All Elite Wrestling is sort of on the horizon. Now, we don't know what it's going to be. Now, they're talking about they're going to be on TBS or TNT or what have you, back in the Turner umbrella. Will that mean something on a national level, or will this be another Lucha Underground, which had a lot of rumblings but never really competed because it wasn't being the same thing as the WWE? I don't know. Not going to speculate. Who knows what's going to happen? I'm not in the office. I'm not doing it, so I don't know what they're going to do. But reality is there's really not a competition for the WWE at the moment, so leaving a company is sort of however you leave it. Either you quit, or they do whatever they do with you, or they just sit you at home, quite frankly. They used to job you on the way out. Now it's more of a, hey, maybe you'll do this match and then we'll just not renew your contract, or you'll quit. I mean, Dean Ambrose is getting a hell of a run on the way out, and he was a top guy, and it's nice to see a guy sort of be treated okay on the way out, knowing that he's leaving. I think they're sort of milking the Shield's last ride thing. I think the last match for the Shield should have been at the pay-per-view. I believe it was Fastlane. That would have made sense. That'd been a good way to bookend it. But they're making a point of having a WWE Network special about it. And again, it's not bad. It's good to see a guy leave and sort of leave on good terms and have a good run. But a lot of guys now are just sort of, I don't know if they're not, I wouldn't say starved, but they're just not there. They're just, they're just gone. Luke Harper appeared at the WrestleMania Andre the Giant Battle Royal. Really, he was already in the ring. He got the jobber engines like most people did. And now he's requesting his release. Again, not really that big of a thing, just meh. And there's always speculation about who's going, but anymore, guys and girls, when they leave, they just don't show up to TV. Like, they ask for a release and they get it and they just go. That's about it. But back in the day, there used to be more. I don't know, maybe it was because there was two companies, maybe because there was somewhere to go, but the exits from a company were actually a little stranger and a little more exciting in a lot of ways. So maybe that's something that's changed, and again, back in the 80s and 70s, departures from territories were a little different and more traditional. You would job on your way out, you'd send a video package to the next territory, and you'd go there and so forth. And then in the 80s, they had that, and the 90s sort of saw that shift of where sometimes exits would be more chaotic, or in the case of Sid, he just didn't show up. They just sort of stopped using him. And then you have the weird cases where, like Jeff Jarrett, where he comes back to do one match, or Lex Luger, which I didn't mention because I feel like it's been covered forever. But you have things like Lex Luger, who worked a house show on Sunday and showed up on Nitro on Monday. Again, just sort of had a deal. Or Rick Rude, which I've covered in a previous episode. Rick Rude, who was on a taped Raw and a live Nitro on the same night because he was working without a contract, and he was able to do that. So I think the 90s was really exciting, and even exits, even how people left companies was sort of unique and a little edgy, and now you don't see that anymore. Now a lot of the stuff you see now is just sort of, I don't want to say expected, but sort of blah. Guys ask for release and you hear about it on the internet, and then if they give it to them, they just don't use them anymore. I mean, I'm sure it's good for business, but it's not really exciting as a fan. So that's all I'm saying. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know this probably isn't as long as you're expecting or you're used to. I mean, I've been now getting to episodes that are around a half hour or so, but I prefer to just do a topic, talk about it, get the stuff out, and move on. I don't really like to go for a half hour or go for a particular time, because then you're just talking filler. So again, thank you guys for listening. Again, a shout out to Frank, ZTO, and all their amazing podcasts. Check them out. Just ZTO Productions, ZTOTV on Facebook, what have you. Shout out to Hillbilly Therapy with Jake Hill. We are going to get that one back online very soon. I'm a producer on that. And there's if you're anywhere remotely local, just a heads up, I may be a little self-promoting. You may be in God knows where, and this probably doesn't affect you, but I'm going to promote it because it's my show, dang it. We just had the successful broken mic. I'm recording this. By the time this reaches you. The show's about 2 weeks old, the Broken Mike show, but we just had it. We have a new shows coming up on May 11th. We'll be at Legends Tavern. We have a lot of stuff going on August 3rd. Beans on Parade will return to Lima, Ohio. There's a lot of stuff going on. This is all stand-up related. This is not wrestling related, but it's a stand-up and all this stuff that I'm doing. So I'm going to promote myself a little bit here. So, and with that, we're going to finish this episode. And I hope you enjoy the page. Keep looking at the page. Keep coming back for new episodes of Exploder. Until next time, my name's Dan. This is Exploder. Have a good one.